Okay. Hi, everybody. It's Eamon here from the Pat Monk podcast. We have a very special guest today. It's Joe, and Joe is joining us all the way from Where Is My Transport? So, Joe, welcome to the call.
Thanks, Eamon. Good to be here.
You're very welcome. So, those maybe they're listening in or regular attendees, can you tell them a little bit more about, Where Is My Transport and what's it all about?
Yeah, sure. WhereIsMyTransport is a mobility technology company. We produce public transport data and public transport apps in emerging markets. So maybe people are wondering what's an emerging market. Lots of different terms in use to describe this part of the world. There's the global south, there's the developing world, and there's a term that we like to use every now and then, the majority world. It's a good reminder for us that the majority of the people in the world are living in emerging markets. And that means for most people getting around by public transport, they don't have access to reliable data. And most people who are working in emerging markets, looking to understand like the heartbeat of those cities, they also have the same problem. And that's the problem that Where's My Transport solves with our public transport data.
Fantastic. And I believe that not just talking about Europe here, like you really truly have some global cities on board and that you're mapping this on a truly global scale. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So we focus on Africa, Asia, Latin America, and Southeast Europe. So we produce multiple types of data. We've got what we call transit data, which is like public transport network data, fares, and so on. Then we produce real-time alerts, which is disruption and incident information. We also produce origin destination data, so that's where public transport users start and end their journeys. And then points of interest, so like where the bus stops are, where the ticket sellers are, and all kinds of services that are like in public transport environments. And we've got cities in our coverage. We've got more than 50 cities in our coverage, including places like Johannesburg, Bangkok, Mexico City, and we very recently launched data in Beirut and in Lagos, Nigeria, which is one of the biggest megacities in the world.
Wow, wow, wow. I mean, these are some big cities. I mean, I've been to Bangkok and I can only imagine how complicated a task it is trying to map a city like that. So with this, what do you find are, some of the businesses or what kind of industries are you focused towards? Obviously the transport sector, stuff like that, but what kind of channels are you using to help, develop, your market, maybe bring on new clients, vendors and stuff like that?
Yeah, so there's two sides to our business, like I mentioned. So we've got this public transport app called Rumbo that is active in Mexico City, Lima, and Bangkok. And for our app, we target people who rely on public transport. Now, this is like a hyper-local app. It's got its own marketing teams. They're doing a smashing job. I'll focus a little bit more on what we do with our data offering and how we promote that. So there are three types of businesses that we predominantly target. So like you've already said, like infrastructure and engineering type businesses. So this is organizations who are working on the ground in emerging markets. They're either doing public transport projects or road network projects, or maybe they're doing some kind of urban development that's like on the fringe of mobility, but it benefits from understanding how people move. So we help those people with their work by giving them information they can rely on about like the actual pulse of these places. Then there's tech companies. This is businesses that use mobility and location data in their products. Good example here would be Google. We license our informal public transport data in Mexico City to Google. So if you're planning a public transport journey on Google Maps in Mexico City, strong chance that our data will influence the results you get. And then the third type of target client is maybe what we call like development or finance institutions. So if you think about businesses like or organizations like the World Bank, this is people who need to know how things work before advising their clients or their stakeholders or maybe making their own investment decisions. They want to make sure that they've got information about the ground truth of those places before telling people what to do or making their own investments so that they can be sure that they're having impact.
Very good, very good. And with like dealing with so many global different markets and different regions of the world, like how do you find, you're growing? I mean, are you mostly focused on, outbound, or is it inbound, developing through your website? And even how important is your website towards bringing on new partners?
Yeah, so we find people in a range of ways. One of our big areas of focus in the last couple of years has been good web content. Naturally, we want people to find us as easily as possible if they're already looking for the sort of thing that we have to offer. So we've done a lot of work refreshing our website content and expanding the website significantly to make sure that it's really crystal clear about the different types of data that we offer and the areas where we work. We've also invested pretty heavily in content marketing, interesting and informative materials that are answering the questions that are valuable to our priority audiences. And yeah, for sure, we bring people to us through digital advertising. We advertise on Google and social media to make sure that we're getting interested people on our sites. You know, my job, I'm communications director, so there are other sides to this where I support maybe more actively. We have a fantastic PR agency that we work with, helping us secure coverage, interviews, thought leadership pieces in influential media outlets, trade media as well. And then there's like the real life stuff, the handshaking. You know, we go to conferences, we speak at events, we visit trade fairs where we talk to people in our sector who we know are looking to work in new places, in emerging markets. And this is kind of about, you know, finding the audience rather than bringing the audience to us. Like I mentioned already, one of our target clients is these development institutions. Organizations like that, they very often put projects out to tender. We keep a close eye on this kind of thing. If something comes up where our data is going to help that project have more success, we'll put ourselves forward, actively finding our audiences there rather than just trying to attract them.
Fantastic, fantastic. And like I love what you said, like finding the audience, because everybody has a great product, but it's just connecting that with the people who really need what you have, and that's where the value comes from. So let's switch gears a little bit here, Joe, and talk more about you, you know, as a leader at what you do. I mean, what keeps you busy? Where is my transport? Like, what keeps you busy on a daily basis?
Yeah, well, you know, we're a growth stage tech company, right? So there's always a lot happening. We have projects on the go. We're constantly working to secure new work. We've got really exciting client projects where we're out there mapping data, and I'm helping them with the outputs that come from those projects. So I do things like working with our clients on case studies, supporting my colleagues in the business development team on lead generation materials, you know, white papers, newspapers, newsletters, and webinars, and so on. So there's a real sort of like hustle and bustle in a business like this. So you know, being like the solo comms person means it's an extremely varied role, and I get to learn from my colleagues with different areas of expertise, which is, you know, constantly rewarding.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And now that we're coming up towards the end of our interview, what I'd like to do is maybe jump into some rapid fire questions, Joe. So are you ready?
I hope so.
No, it's all good. So like the first one is, what was the last book you read?
Ooh, that's a tricky one for somebody like me. So I'm a neurodivergent person, and this makes it kind of tough to get to the end of a book. I don't read fiction because I feel like real life is interesting enough without like introducing parallel worlds. But I was on holiday recently, and I did manage to finish this really interesting book on the Greater United States. I believe it's called How to Hide an Empire. And obviously, this is like geopolitics, but I kind of went at it thinking about it as a communications book because the US was formed as a anti-empire exercise, but it went on to become one of the biggest empires in the world. So the whole book is really about how they squared that communications circle, becoming one of the biggest empires while kind of not talking about it.
Very good. Yeah, very interesting. I must check that out because this sounds super interesting. And also looking at, you know, your day to day, I mean, what is one task that you're doing that if you could, you know, wave a magic wand and it could be, you know, automated, what's something that's taking up your time that you wish, wow, I could automate that? What would that be?
That's really easy. And I reckon everybody in my line of work would say the same thing here, which is make everything trackable. If I could make everything trackable, this would really be pretty fantastic for me because we do a lot in communications that is very trackable, but then there's a lot that isn't, right? So if you imagine I spend multiple days working with my CEO on the structure and script for a talk at a conference. That's the sort of thing that happens all the time in my line of work. We go to the conference, we give the talk. Someone in the audience remembers us a few weeks later when they see a project that benefits from the sort of thing that we do. They tell their colleague, the colleague checks us out, they think it's great. They tell the person that's responsible for signing the deal. We ask that person, how did they hear about us? And they say, oh, my colleague recommended you. But actually, the process was far more complicated than that. And it's just not possible at the moment to perfectly track that because of the nature of, being a human, right? So if I could wave my magic wand and solve that problem, that would be really transformative.
Very good. Yeah, I've never really thought about, yeah, but definitely that will be a time saver. And what I want to do very simply, Joe, is give you the last word. Okay, and imagine if people who are listening in, imagine they forgot everything that we just spoke about. If you were to leave them with just one point, all about, where is my transport, what would that be?
Sure. Well, I guess I'd ask people to be conscious of the fact that emerging markets are a massive opportunity, a high growth opportunity. Just this year, we're expecting emerging markets to grow in value by like almost $2 trillion, which is more than double the growth of developed markets. And public transport is the heartbeat of emerging markets. It's got like a 67% modal share. It's how people get around. It's like the heartbeat and the veins of emerging markets. So to understand these opportunities and the scale of the opportunity, you need public transport data that you can rely on. And WhereIsMyTransport is the best source of public transport data for emerging markets, and it's data that's helping businesses and institutions make better informed decisions, and it's helping commuters in those places make better informed decisions themselves.
Fantastic, fantastic, and it's incredible to hear. And I mean, two trillion? Did you say 2 trillion in growth?
Yep.
Wow, incredible, incredible. So thank you so much, Joe, for being on our call. I'm sure that lots of people, whether they're in Mexico City or Largos, will end up using what you're helping to create to get themselves from A to B. I know I will. So thank you very much for being on the call. And that is it for today's episode. So looking forward to seeing everybody on our next episode. All the best and bye-bye.